Our show's what you know. We'll always watch TV. And if you think we can't, we'll watch more and you'll see. That's why the people of the web believe in Jim from Las Vegas and Jacob from Sweden.
2 in a row. Who'd have thunk it? That's right. Your boys from SWYK, a.k.a. Shows What You Know, a.k.a. SWYK. Jim Scampoli, Jim from Las Vegas, Jacob from Sweden. We talking TV. Jacob, tell me about it.
They used to call it the idiot box. What is it now? The idiot rectangle? I've been watching it all week. And have I got news for you related to television? You have to listen to find out. Welcome back to episode 2. Yeah, it's a rebrand. It's a reboot. All the cool shows are doing it.
I think that's the most genius thing about it, because people that follow us a long time know that we enjoy a good meta take.
What? Us?
And when you really break it down, this is quite a meta take on TV and entertainment and pop culture in general, because Shows What You Know has been rebooted. So, yes, we're going to discuss some TV news. We're going to get in a little bit of what we've been watching. And then I think Jacob has like a presentation. Jacob put in some work this week.
Yeah, well, one of the things that has changed since maybe a year ago, or when you might have been hearing from us on the Tapat feed. You know, we love an abbreviation here. That's the podcast about television, which you can find at showswhatyouknow.com. One of the things that has changed for me in the last year is that I no longer work a soul-crushing corporate job, which is good. But I no longer have an outlet for all of my PowerPoint presentations. I'm just like jonesing to create some sort of slide deck, and I'm about to slide into your deck over here and do an in-depth presentation on why you should be watching a particular show. But we'll save that for later.
All right, love to hear it. So, well, then let's start out. What's going on in television news? I guess this, how apropos of last week, I asked you this very question, Jacob. I said, I've seen people say that if they really wanted to, they could do a Shogun season 2, a show I haven't watched yet, but Jacob mentioned in what he's been watching. You did mention that they had basically fully adapted the book that it was based off of, but there's maybe some more history they can mine, and now there's some news that's coming out. What's going on?
Well, yeah, I believe I said, pshaw, they would never, something along those lines. And then you sent to me the article where the creators are basically like, it's happening, we're doing it. And I was like, okay. I don't have the article in front of me. Do you have the deets on the exact wording? Because I'll pull it up. We'll find it. But it's very interesting.
I guess it's not so much confirming a season 2 technically. But they're saying Shogun nears a season 2 renewal at FX as the star, Hiroyuki Sanada, signs a deal to return. So, I guess potentially maybe this could be like some sort of spin-off, a different type of show maybe. But I guess either way, no matter how you slice it, it's essentially the continuation of Shogun. Shogun may be returning for a second season. Star and producer has signed a deal with FX to return as Lord Yoshi Toranaga in the Japanese historical epic, sources tell Variety. The show was billed as a limited series, but as Variety reported Thursday, FX is considering moving it into the drama category. Oh, okay, so that was like the first hint for the Emmy race. It wasn't in, or they're thinking of taking it out of the limited series category and putting in like TV drama.
And we were just talking about those definitions last week, right? It's like, why is this allowed on Letterboxd and this isn't? I guess, it has to do with, these definitions matter more as far as what awards will it be eligible for, more so than is it on Letterboxd or is it not? Because basically, they're implicitly saying, we're going to make more of this if they're saying it's in the drama series category rather than the miniseries category.
Absolutely, yeah. And like I was saying, if they do all of a sudden roll out a season 2, Letterboxd has to do their due diligence and take that shit right off of Letterboxd. This is stuff that we really pay attention to, and we think is very important. We need to... so all or nothing on the Letterboxd. So they're saying that in the event, then the pilot Major John Blackthorne will probably return, but there are plenty of pieces that must fall into place before an official green light. Now, if this actor also has a producer credit, this could be again, this could just still be like covering your bases type stuff. Like,
Yeah.
hey, we want to lock you in just in case. We're still kind of mulling it over. To date our discussion a little bit, the like network upfronts are going on. This is like prime TV news time because that's basically where they put on, like, the networks put on these big presentations where they roll out their either renewals, cancellations, and then potentially like the pilots they've picked up for the fall season, like what's going to be the new shows. So there'll probably be a lot of things like this swirling around over the next few weeks.
Yeah, and we're still in a fluffy in-between period to date this further. Like when I was searching for it just now, there's articles coming up that are saying that Shogun viewers are conflicted over unexpected news about the show's future. And it's news, but it's kind of not news because it's just like people tweeting about how it was perfect as a miniseries. They shouldn't do more. As I said last week, I'm just like, whatever they decide to do, I'll be there for it. It's not going to tarnish the first season if it does become a prolonged show for me, because this is the part of it that adapts the book. You can just say it's over there, say the rest is fan fiction, or it might be something completely different they're making, right? But yeah, it's not really news. It's still fluffy. It's still like, oh, someone has signed up. We don't know. Who knows? We're still playing that game. So maybe there'll be more news on this front as things progress.
I go back and forth. I ping pong back and forth on your point there, where, I mean, you see this a lot, this sentiment a lot, because obviously we deal with a lot of reboots or sequels or legacy sequels. I mean, we even have some news on one in a second, of the idea of like, well, it doesn't hurt the original. And I do, yeah, that is true, but then it's also kind of not true. There's like a gray area there because, like, yeah, I mean, The Matrix is awesome, but like, imagine if it didn't have all this extra like garbage around it of like the sequels, or even like Star Wars with the prequels, and then, however you might feel about the sequel trilogy. It's hard not to maybe say it like puts a few bruises on the original product, or do you not think so at all?
Yeah, no, a good point. There was a period of time when we didn't know what midichlorians were. And I mean, I still don't really know, but I guess I see your point. But for me, I think if this was like 10 years later and they're like, we're going to do a season 2 now, I guess I'd be like, okay, so you're just capitalizing on the success of this thing to make something that's going to be completely different as a guarantee because it's been 10 or 20 years or whatever. Then I'd be a bit more critical of the concept versus now they're like, hey, we have a bunch of talented people who just made a great show together. Let's see if they can make something else. And we still don't know if that's going to be some anthology thing. As you said, he's a producer, right? So is he on board as an actor or as a producer? Are they just looking to make more things in this universe? Even if they do that, like having that character in there would make so much sense, even if they skip forward in time or something like that. I do see your point, but I'm also like, I guess I was so taken with the show that I'm like, yeah, let's see what you got. And then later, I get to enjoy complaining about it. So, I win either way.
Yeah, I guess the other side of it too is there's always a risk of like, it's more so, it's not so much that it's going to tarnish the original, but there's a risk of like the Emperor has no clothes type deal. I mean, I keep going to movie comparisons, but this is a little different but similar. Like Donnie Darko, I think is an awesome movie. It's one of my favorites. And then the director put out this director's cut that made me second guess. I was like, oh, he doesn't get why his movie was good because he made this director's cut that kind of goes against everything that I liked about his original. So sometimes there's that. Or this wasn't me, but when they put out the Many Saints movie, everyone was like, "Oh, yeah, David Chase is an idiot. Like he doesn't understand anything." But so I don't know. I get just interesting questions. But yeah, I guess I haven't watched this show, but if it is more so he's just returning as this character, but it's a different story in a similar time frame, that like an anthology type deal in that respect, that does make maybe a bit more sense. But I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, a very fair point. Well, one thing that we know is getting a reboot or spin-off or something in between is The Office, right? Isn't that our second piece of news of the day? I mean, this has
Yes.
been known for a while, right? I only just found out about it myself because I wasn't paying attention, but you've known this for a while.
I think it's just one of those things where we all kind of collectively knew in the back of our heads that they weren't going to just let this go, that we would eventually see The Office again, especially, over the past few years when you started hearing about how big it was on streaming and like younger generations really started getting into it. It was like, oh, like we're due. And then we were discussing this before the show here, like they don't really even know if they want to call it a reboot or a sequel or a spin-off because it's from what they're saying is that it's essentially like in the same universe. It's the documentary crew that immortalized Dunder Mifflin's Scranton branch is in search of a new subject when they discover a dying historic Midwestern newspaper and the publisher trying to revive it with volunteer reporters. And, back to what you were saying, yes, they did officially announce in like the beginning of the year that they had gotten a writer's room together to kind of spitball ideas around. But now it seems like this is becoming more of a reality because there's even casting announcements that are happening. And I mean, to me, I liked The Office when it was on. I haven't looked back since, and I thought the show was just going to be forgotten. But as I said, streaming numbers don't lie, and so this is something you can't let go.
Yeah, I guess it is more of a spin-off, or it has to be if we already know it's about. Well, it's a newspaper. It's not a paper company. You were giving me shit for saying Parks and Rec. It's not a paper company, Jacob. So,
but I mean, what's the logical extension of paper company? A newspaper.
Yeah, both dying arts.
Yeah.
And we know Donald Gleason and Sabrina Impacciatore are cast in this show, so I guess that's cool. We got another Irish boy probably going to continue to take the world by storm as the Irish Revolution happens. They seem to be everywhere these days.
That's what I'm wondering because I was saying this beforehand. Like, is this guy going to do an American accent? Is he going to have an Irish or is he Irish or Scottish?
He's Irish.
All right. Or is he gonna?
He's like Brennan Gleeson's son.
Oh,
Hence
I didn't realize
Gleason.
this. Yes,
Yeah.
hence the Gleason. Because I mean, I don't think this bodes well for an American audience. We don't like that stuff. Maybe a little bit. Although I did just read that it's a Peacock show though too. And those don't tend to really, like tear down they're not water cooler talk for the most part. But maybe this is the thing that Peacock needs. They need to reboot The Office.
Yeah.
But the other side of it, and I'm sure this has been pointed out. I'm not breaking new ground here, but like the documentary crew, like.
Are we done with that? Is that what you're going to say?
Well, I just mean like the reality of the show is that they made this. I guess the reality of the show is that the show was the documentary. So they made this like 10-year long paper company documentary.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm trying to be in the reality of the show. Like, how did this happen? Who was funding this? Who was watching it in reality? And how are they still working? Like, what? I don't know. It's a whole nother podcast that we'll probably be launching, like Paper on Fire, the Dunder Mifflin story, hosted by Jim and Jacob,
where we do investigative podcasting about the documentary crew. It sounds like something we would do. But yeah, it is interesting that they're. I mean, it never made sense. Obviously this is the U.S. Office we're talking about, not the original UK show.
Yes.
The UK series had the 2 series, right? So like 12 episodes, a special. That's reasonable for a documentary crew to put together. We're starting to strain the limits of reality with The Office at this stage. But I feel like it's become so ubiquitous from The Office UK, starting in The Office UK. Well, it not starting there. Obviously, we had mockumentaries before then, but just that format became so prolific in comedy in particular. I guess in other formats as well, but there are so many of those types of shows, whether it's What We Do in the Shadows, which is a mockumentary with vampires, whether it's The Thick of It, which is kind of, I guess that's maybe not technically a mockumentary, but everything was like shot that way for a solid 10 years, so yeah.
Well, don't even get me started on Modern Family, which
Yeah.
was mockumentary. But again, like, who is this documentary for that they've been making for 7 or 8 years about just a family? This is just a pet peeve of mine. You opened an old wound. I'm not gonna get too far into it, but
yeah,
stop.
I mean it's such a giving format because you can always cut to like a funny talking head instead of doing like a voiceover like you would in a sitcom, or instead of thinking of something innovative like Zach Morris doing a timeout and talking to the camera.
Yeah.
You have to do like you cut to them talking about it later, say one thing, show them doing a different thing. So like very classic kind of things at this stage that were very innovative in The Office, and even going back to mockumentaries way before them. But I feel like it became prolific from them, and it's just continued on to this day.
Yeah, I'm just obsessed with the reality of the universe that we're in. Because I know there's a show that everyone likes that I haven't seen, Abbott Elementary, that's on right now, and I think that's also a mockumentary. But at least there's logic there because they're like following a school or a charter school or something like that. So there's a hook that makes a little bit more sense than like, hey, here's this suburban family and their extended family, and we're following them around. Who's watching this? Anyways, what else we got? What else is in the news?
I think, well, from mockumentaries to documentaries, there's a suit related to Tiger King, a documentary we all watched and then promptly forgot existed in 2020. I believe the details were that there was a suit concerning one of the clips used, where originally a videographer who worked for the Tiger King himself alleged that his clips had been taken and used without his permission, so therefore he should get a big payout because he only got $150 per week from the Tiger King and he had to live in a trailer. Pretty reasonable in some ways. They're off making millions off your footage. But it was protected by fair use originally, or that was the original ruling, which was then appealed to a higher court. And the latest on it is that the decision is, no, you were not allowed to use this clip because it wasn't transformative enough. Basically, specifically, this is about a clip where the Tiger King is talking to camera, and it's like a eulogy that he's giving, and the court ruled that they did not comment enough on the footage itself. It's quite interesting because it's basically saying it is using this as if it were stock footage, and it does make sense in the context of the documentary. They're commenting on Tiger King, right? The person, the individual, but it's not commenting on the footage, is what the courts say. They're not like adding anything transformative to the footage itself, and they ruled it's not within the bounds of fair use. Now, if you're not someone who uploads things to YouTube, maybe you don't spend as much time thinking about fair use as everyone else. But I make long form videos for YouTube and edit in a bunch of stuff, and I'm constantly thinking about like how far can I let this play? When should I cut to something else? Because it's quite likely that you'll get some sort of flag from YouTube, even if you are using things in a transformative manner. And then you have to go back and sort of basically put a claim that says, I am confident that this is within fair use, and if you don't like it, you can sue me. That's what you have to do as someone who uploads things to YouTube, right?
Yeah, you have to say, here's all my information, here's my name and address and my signature, and I'm saying that, I dare you. I dare you to sue me.
I've dared people to sue me so many times. And basically, in this case, they did. The interesting thing about a case like this is it might set sort of a precedent. The articles we were checking out about it are mostly talking about how, it could impact how specifically true crime documentaries are put together, because people have had a lot of sort of sway, or have had a lot of freedom in pulling these types of clips and including them. And where is that line? It's a notoriously murky line, and cases like these set precedent that can then sort of shift the overall perception of what is and isn't within the realm of fair use.
Yeah, but see, the tough thing is, because I was going to ask you that same thing, because I was like, I know you make, long form YouTube videos and you're using other works, but it is for, like the discussion or the video essay, it is fair use. But the difference with this is because, like, and maybe this is hypocritical, but like, to me, this is the little guy fighting the big guy. And the big guy, Netflix, they don't give a fuck about fair use when it's someone's popular YouTube video. You know what I mean? They're the ones that want a piece. They got their hand out. And now all of a sudden, they had this huge monster hit. I feel like there probably would have been settlement opportunities somewhere. I mean, this case has been going on for 4 years. And rather than just, breaking a piece off for this guy, I mean, I understand, that could open the floodgates where now everyone steps forward and wants the piece of whatever. But I don't know. I have to imagine that this could have been handled a little bit better on Netflix part. And now it's like the Hollywood studio machine has to be like, but we need to protect fair use. When I don't really feel like they care about that as much as, creators like us do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Netflix would be the people that were daring to sue us because we're using their footage, right? And they, I imagine, would be quite trigger happy themselves in protecting their, intellectual property, as it were. So yeah, I'm not necessarily like, oh, boo-hoo, this person beat Netflix. It's kind of it's a hard position to take, but it is just kind of interesting because, it had like some stuff in the case, like some of what he had shot, this person, Sipa? No, what the fuck was his name? The videographer. Seppi, the videographer. Tim Seppi.
Tim Seppi,
yeah. He, like, some of what he had shot was while he was hired by Joe Exotic, the Tiger King, and the court was like, that's work for hire. That doesn't have the same type of protection, versus there was something else he shot that was uploaded to YouTube when he was not in the employ of Joe Exotic. So then maybe he owns the creative sort of, rights to that content in a different way. And how does that affect what you're allowed to use and not use? Tiger King, a show none of us have thought about for the last 4 years. But now you have to. Thanks to SWYK. You're welcome, everyone.
Yeah. Well, it is great to think that, something that we were all obsessed with and then completely forgot about could have huge ramifications on whether it be YouTube content, video essays, or these true crime documentaries that we love so much. And I mean, that's the other side of it too. It's because clearly, in the past decade, true crime documentaries, podcasts, whatever, this stuff's become big business. And you can see it now, because it used to be these things were like passionate projects that took years to make. And now Netflix is dumping these things out constantly. Well, not just Netflix, the other, streaming networks are as well. And you could tell in the quality in a lot of these. Sometimes they're just thrown together, whatever. So that's just kind of the price you pay as things start to become, more of a commodity than like information or education,
Yeah, very much so. I think that wraps it up for our news from the big world out there. But now what I want, Jim, is news from you. I want to hear what you've been watching, Jim.
Oh, I'm glad you asked. And I mean, this is kind of what we had mentioned last week on our first episode. This show specifically motivated me to watch things.
Wait, sorry. I'm gonna cut it. So, do we have a sound, right? Like we
I'm a dummy. I already forgot. I'm already like in my zone. I'm already in my zone.
I'm glad you're enjoying the discussion, but we have promised jingles. We promised segments, discussions that are sort of neatly packaged. So how could we proceed without hearing the song
correct.
a song?
And I should have had a new one at this point, but I mean, hey, there's only so much time.
What TV shows have you been watching? Tell me, I gotta know.
I feel like Johnny Lawrence would really appreciate that one. What TV shows have you been watching? I'm asking myself. And yeah, as I was saying, like I probably wouldn't have watched this. I probably would have just watched more Survivor, which I have been watching. Australian Survivor, which I took a little bit of a break from, but I'm back into catching up. This is old Australian Survivor seasons I'm watching, and of course Challenge All Stars. But I took a break from the important stuff to watch a new Apple TV Plus show called Sugar, starring Colin Farrell. Which I know I'm behind on this show. I think they just had their 7th episode, maybe. Yes, yeah, they just had their 7th episode. So, well, the main reason why I started watching this, and there's not going to be any spoilers, is, and I guess, I don't know, you could, if you're super spoiler phobic, this could potentially, like, skip ahead 10 seconds. All I'm saying is that there is supposed to be a reveal or a twist to this show. I don't know what it is yet. It hasn't happened yet. It happens a few more episodes past where I'm at. But basically, from where I'm at, 3 episodes in, it's a very noir, like, Colin Farrell is this detective slash, the man who specializes in finding missing people. And it's got everything down to, like, the gruff narration of him being like, I can't sleep these days. I'm doing blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And then him being a cool guy in a really nice suit with a nice watch, driving around in a nice convertible. He's a movie buff, so he's really, like, into movies. And the editing's very, like, frantic, where it also shows clips from old movies, like, within the context of some scenes. Like, when he's driving on the street, it'll show a clip from a classic, like, Humphrey Bogart movie of a similar car. Now, I'm sure I don't know or not. Knowing there's a reveal, maybe that's some sort of hint at it. I did want to bring this up because I know Jacob hates things like that, like twists, potential twists.
I think that's a generalization. Jacob hates twists.
What makes
it?
Before you answer, I just want to say, just real quick before you answer, the IMDb breakdown is just private investigator John Sugar examines the mysterious disappearance of Olivia Siegel, the granddaughter of a legendary Hollywood producer. But yes, go ahead about the twists, Jacob.
I don't dislike all twists. I think you're thinking of dream sequences, which I do dislike pretty much all dream sequences. But yeah, so do you have any guesses on what the twist is? Is it all going to be in VR, and also does it take place in present day? Because I keep seeing the trailer for this ahead of things I'm trying to watch on Apple TV, but I haven't actually, tried out the first episode yet.
What's interesting is because I caught myself thinking that during the show, and it does take place in present day, because you do see him on a phone, and they're using computers and stuff, but everything else also does feel very period piece between his car, the way he dresses, stuff like that, and just even kind of that vibe. So yeah, I'm sure that's very purposeful, or that like they're doing that on purpose. I mean, again, it'd be interesting. I'm a little bummed that I even know there's supposed to be a reveal. That's why I just said, like, hey, if you're super anti-spoilers, I guess you wouldn't want to know that. But I feel like a lot of people are openly talking about it on the internet. I've luckily not seen that yet. But I mean, the first guess, knowing there's a reveal and seeing movie clips, I would almost be like, okay, but it almost feels too obvious. Is he just a dummy guy in a coma watching movies, or you know what I mean? The classic, like, I'm not this cool guy, because they do make him like the coolest guy.
Yeah.
So your eyebrows raise a bit, like, is he really this cool? But there's a lot of intrigue, a lot of like, who are these people he's working with? He does have hints of, like, when people are like, who are you? And his voiceover will be like, I wish I could tell you, or something like that. They've dropped hints that, like, he's a part of this genius group of people that know all these languages, and they try to do good for the world or something. And because in the beginning, he's like in Tokyo or something, and he shows up at this guy's apartment and, like, whoops his ass because he's got he kidnapped a kid, like an important kid or something, but he's speaking all in Japanese. But then they'll intercut that with, like, that's in black and white, and that's intercut with, like, movies as it's happening. I don't know if I would be sticking with it, honestly. again, like maybe my expectations are completely different because I know there's a reveal. So sometimes I'm kind of like, all right, what is going on? Like, am I wasting my time? Is there going to be a payoff here? It's intriguing. Colin Farrell's really good. Amy Ryan's in it as well, who I like. She was also on The Office.
And I see it's created by the creator of I Am Legend and Poseidon, which is
I didn't realize this. Anna Gunn just popped up in episode 3 that I was watching. She wasn't in any of the previous episodes, so it was nice to see her.
Nice.
So I'm interested to see where it goes. I'm on board so far. But yeah, that's what I'm watching. Sugar on Apple TV Plus. Apple TV Plus is kind of like a dark horse these days. Feels like they're popping up. I don't want to say they're more curated because maybe just because they have less content than the other ones, but it feels a little bit curated. But then again, that's how Netflix felt in the beginning as well. It's just before they start really bombarding you with more stuff.
Yeah, well, while I don't hate all twists, I think I understand better what you were saying now, because that feeling when you're watching episode after episode and the show is just being mysterious and you're like, oh, you can't really trust any of this. Is this all a dream? Is it all in it? Like, you know how I feel about dream sequences. And I think that general fuckaboutery, I'm like, that's not intriguing enough to keep me going on its own. And often the reveals that are involved invalidate the stakes they've been trying to build up to that point, is often how I feel about it. When that's like Legion, the TV show Legion to me, you know, that's that type of vibe. Now this sounds better than Legion, but I do note that all it says on the Wikipedia for the premise is that it's a genre bending take on the private detective story. So genre bending plus Apple TV, to my mind, equals science fiction, because I agree with what you're saying. Apple TV is making a lot of shows, and I'm watching a lot of them because I have a free subscription through a friend, so I'm just like, oh yeah, let's see what's on there. And I've watched a bunch of shows on Apple TV. It's probably the one I've been watching the most of recently. And you know what? They're all science fiction. Even when you think they're not science fiction, it turns into science fiction. Someone over at Apple headquarters is like, let's create a futurism sort of concept. Let's bring back this excitement about the future because we're Apple and we make technology, so we have to make sure that everyone feels cool and positive about technology. That's why they're making the show For All Mankind, which I've watched every season of, which is this sort of parallel reality where the Soviets won the space race and the space race never ended. And how far into the solar system would we have gotten by now if if we never actually stopped reaching for the stars? Which is great, and I like that, and I like space, but it's also like part of their science fiction agenda. So I think it's going to end up Colin Farrell's just sitting with a fucking Apple Vision Pro is my guess.
It's interesting you say that because my way out there theory is that he's like a member of a group of aliens because he did. Like, he has this handler he goes to, and then they had this party of all these people, and again, there's supposed to be these linguists that are here to help people. And he had a meeting with her, and she had this mysterious briefcase that she opened at the end of the episode I just watched, and there was a typewriter in it. And I'm like, oh no, is he an alien? Are they all aliens? So
you have to assume if they use typewriters.
Which, I mean, I get it's good and bad that I'm aware that something's going on, because I would be interested. If I was, I guess if someone out there has watched this week to week and got to like naturally go through the story without realizing there is like a thing to it. So I'm not saying I'm ahead of it, because I probably wouldn't be guessing these things. I'm only guessing these things because I know there's something. I mean, I guess I'd be watching and I'd still know something's up, because the way it's edited, they are like trying to not let you get comfortable. They're definitely with the way the shots are and the editing. And I feel like I haven't really fully noted this, but I feel like they do the thing where you pass the line, like the for people that don't know, it's like when you watch a traditional conversation or something in a movie or show, when it's reverse shot, usually there's like an imaginary line that the rule is you don't cross, but until you need to break that rule because you want to have the audience feel something's a little off or something's kind of going on here. So rather than being on, the right side of that line, sometimes in a conversation it'll cut to the other shoulder or something like that to kind of throw things off a little bit.
Yeah, and practically what that means, because I had a hard time in film school when people would try to explain this to me. It just basically means people are looking in weird directions in the edit, right? So you're cutting back and forth between people, and someone's looking off to the left. Then the next person is also looking to the left and up or whatever. Like if you're shooting from a completely different part of the room, all of a sudden it's a wide shot or whatever. If you disregarding that rule will help build sort of an ominous. Not ominous, but yeah, kind of a mysterious weirdness. It's because the reason that rule exists is so that you can follow the continuity of what's happening, right? Like who's talking to who, what's going on. And so breaking that rule is one way you can kind of throw the viewer off a bit, much like editing in old movies and shit like that. So it sounds, now I am coming to this realization myself, but yeah, it sounds like Legion, sounds like Westworld season 1, which Westworld season 1, I feel like I was kind of on the case of this being a bad show earlier than other people, because I was like, they're just building up reveals. I'm not convinced there's anything behind this. And when we had season upon season proving that was indeed the case, even though there were some good moments in there, it was still like, you can't spend too much time on that shit is how I feel about it. So it depends, right? Like I see as well, like the runtime is pretty variable on these, going from 32 to like 50 minutes on the episode. So how is it moving at a fair clip? Like, do you think I would get pissed off and turn it off? Sorry. Would I get pissed off and turn it off at the stage you're at, or should I give it a chance? Or should I wait until you finished it and then you tell me if I should watch it or not?
I'd say right now, yeah, you should give it a chance, but maybe, give me a few more episodes. I think at least so far from what I watched, the first episode, was like around 50 minutes, but the past two have been more about 30, 35, which is a bit more manageable. And they're still doing, like, the mystery layer is still, it's working with tropes, but it's working with them well. It's the classic girl gone missing, but in this case, he's a movie buff. She happens to be from, her grandfather is like this studio executive, her dad's like a producer, her brother's an actor. So it gets very in Hollywood type situations of dealing with the glitz and the glamour, but also the undercurrent of the drug dealers and the muscle for hire that work for these people. So it's playing with that stuff pretty well.
Like many film fucks, this is kind of tropes that I would be into, right? Like every screenwriter wants to write fucking movies about screenwriters writing screenplays, and I am unfortunately here for it. So it does sound like it has a lot more to offer me than, say, Legion. But yeah, we'll have to. I look forward to hearing your opinion, because you're a couple episodes behind, and to date this again, the last episode's coming out this week as well. So we'll have to see how they wrap it up. What have I been watching lately, you say?
Oh, well, I'm not sure. I think there might be a question for you.
What TV shows have you been watching? Tell me, I gotta know.
I've really been enjoying Game Changer Season 6. Now, Game Changer is a game show. It's on the streaming platform. It's on the streaming platform Dropout.tv, which is maybe why you might not have heard of it, because Dropout.tv is a very popular one, but also, well, not very popular compared to other streaming shows. It has a very dedicated fan base, a very dedicated base of subscribers that go to Dropout. It has a very, relative to other streaming platforms, very small group of shows on there, but they're all produced in-house. There's no licensing or anything like that. And Dropout.tv is College Humor. You'll recall collegehumor.com. It basically morphed over time. They released a streaming service called Dropout, where people could pay for more of their scripted content and things like that. But then that was quite popular. College Humor, the website, was less popular. College Humor was also sold by sort of the conglomerate that held it back to some of the people who were actually working at it. So Sam Reich, one of the people involved in College Humor from the start, bought College Humor back, rebranded it into Dropout. So it's now fully just Dropout. And he's the host of Game Changer, one of the first shows on the network that's now on its 6th season. So I hear you asking, what is the concept of Game Changer? Well, it's the only game show where the game changes every show. and they have 3 contestants on each episode. The contestants have no idea what the game is going to be because it's new rules, new sort of weird lateral thinking puzzles and games that they don't know what to expect, and Sam Reich will just start firing questions at them and expect them to answer, but they don't really know what is the concept, because there's always some twist, there's always some interesting thing about it. And the thing that I like about it is that they're in their 6th season, and if anything, you'd think they'd be running out of ideas because literally every episode is a different game show, right? But I feel like they are getting better over time. Like, they spend more time and effort thinking about the types of ideas they could do and things like that. So just to give you some examples to make it a bit more concrete, one of the episodes, and this is, minor spoilers for Game Changer, because when you start each episode, you usually don't know what the concept is, but also it's not going to be major spoilers really, and it's worth watching anyway. So just an example, one episode is called Second Place, where the 3 players compete in different types of challenges, but only the player who comes in second receives a point. So whatever the challenge is, you have to try to sort of finagle it so that you're in second place, the second best at whatever the type of challenge is. Another one was... Yeah.
When do they not know this until they've gotten their place? Like, how does that work?
So they basically come in, Sam Reich invites them on up to their podiums, because it's a classic, like, very colorful set with podiums, and a lot of the episodes will end up with, like, the background is fully spray painted, or there's spaghetti all over the place, or whatever the concept is. Just kind of, it's basically intentionally goes off the rails of what you expect a game show to be in different ways, right? So the contestants have no idea what it is, and that's like one of the first things in the opening spiel. Sam Reich is like, you all know how the game works, right? And they're like, no. And he's like, that's right. The only way to... whatever his fucking spiel is. He has one of those things, you say at the start of a thing, but basically saying, you guys don't know what the game is. The only way for you to find out what the game is to play the game. Here's the first challenge / question / whatever it is. So they've done a bunch of different ones, like literally 6 seasons, right? Pencils Down was one where they have to create sort of art challenges based on prompts from Sam Reich and from other guests. So doing sculptures and basically getting judged on which one's the best one. That's like more straightforward, just trying to achieve an aim and do the best thing, right? But then they get very weird sometimes. So they also, I should note, the contestants on this show, they're all kind of part of the College Humor / Dropout extended family of performers, meaning that they're all improv comedians or like writers of sketch comedy or in some other way involved in the making of funny things for the internet. So a lot of like what makes it appealing is what approach will they take to the different challenges. Some of the ones are like, basically make the sound of this and whatever the thing is, and it basically is like, oh, what would this sound like? And it basically is like an improv prompt, right? So whoever does the funniest one will win it. And they did a spin-off show that was all that type of stuff. This was part of their push, because College Humor originally, they were making like a lot of scripted sketches and that type of thing, and they were really trying to get more into unscripted comedy and sort of capturing improv type stuff, and that kind of is part of the development here. So Game Changer.
No, I'm intrigued. Although, so do you subscribe? Because I'm looking at like how to watch it. So do you subscribe to the Dropout TV app?
I do indeed.
I'll have to look into this, because I'm not familiar at all. But what you've said, you've sold me. I'm very interested, because again, it's like we've switched places, Jacob. You're watching a game show. I'm watching a Peak TV streaming drama. What the world is upside down.
Yeah, very much so. Well, if you're peaked, let me tell you this to get you over the edge, Jim. They have a multi-part series that's just Game Changer : Survivor, where they're doing Survivor. So inspired by Survivors, the players are split into teams, compete to make each other laugh to gain immunity from being eliminated. But also, there are immunity sort of totems hidden around the set. So between these challenges, they film like talking heads. And during that time, the other people are making alliances because they're voting each other off. They're finding these totems that will give them immunity and sort of scheming against one another. And they're all funny people, so that's kind of why it works. Another very weird one was Escape Room, where the contestants were told they're going to come down shortly. It's almost ready. Meanwhile, they've set up cameras all over the green room, and the green room has been transformed into an escape room. This is one of the more higher budget ones, but they've built an entire escape room unbeknownst to the people participating. They've locked them in there, and that's the episode, basically following them, and they just immediately start smashing shit, which is very funny. Yeah, so I definitely recommend it to you specifically. There's other stuff on Dropout I might talk about on a different episode, but I think this would be the gateway drug for you specifically, Jim.
Oh, I love it. Look at us. Look at us having recs for each other. It's almost like we're hosting a TV podcast. Well, you love to see it. So, yeah, I guess, is that for what? Is that for?
What TV shows have you been watching? Tell me, I gotta know.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there because I realized we're doing shows regularly, so I need to save some shows to talk about at different times.
But that's what I realized. Like, oh, I better watch something, or I'm just gonna talk about the same stuff I just talked about.
Yeah. Well, you know what else I've been watching recently that I think you should watch, and I may have created a whole slide deck to convince you of.
Yes. All right. Yeah. You want me to pull this up here?
We don't have
a jingle for this yet, do we?
No, but we talked about, why you should watch. It's actually kind of almost a genre of content, I think, on YouTube, like why you should watch XYZ, and it usually appeals to whoever has already watched it and they want to hear why it's great. But I've made this specifically for you. So if you're on the audio feed, go to youtube.com/showswhatyouknow to follow along. But basically, hey, Jim.
Yeah, that's me.
Do you like Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
I love it. It's in my top 5 shows of all time, as you know.
Do you like Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 1?
Not as much, but I do like it.
Okay, well, I was kind of banking on you saying yes. So
I mean, I do. I'm just saying, when you pitch Buffy to me, there are more seasons I'm going to like more than Season 1, but I still do like it.
That's good. And do you like it even though it's kind of cheesy and the special effects don't hold up and you have to suspend your disbelief harder than Angel broke Jenny Callender's neck?
Now you're speaking my language because yes to all of the above.
Well, then you will love. Oh, we're not there yet. Do you like the jank? Do you like the cheesy things are kind of falling apart? You can kind of see the camera in the background of Season 1 of Buffy. Doesn't it kind of make you feel cozy and kind of at home?
I do like it because it gives you that feeling of like, I could go out there and do this too. I'm just lazy.
Yes, well, that is why you should watch Garth Marenghi's Darkplace. Is this a show you've heard about before?
I've definitely heard the name before, and I believe I've seen stills. This is different, but in the same. This reminds me of the other thing I keep hearing about. Isn't there some sort of ghost hunter mockumentary, or is this a ghost hunter mockumentary?
No, it's not a ghost hunter mockumentary.
Okay.
I believe probably you've heard about it because I've recommended this show to you in the past. That's kind of the point of this segment. The why you should watch segment is where I've tried to sell you on watching certain things in the past and they haven't took. So I've put the extra effort in. I've made a deck and we're going to go through the slides together on why you should watch this particular thing. And then next week we can see if the deck was successful. That's like sort of our success metric here. Again, bringing it back to the corporate world, you got to hit those KPIs, Jim.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love that the corporate Jakob that's shown up, and he didn't just go there and waste away in the corporate life. He brought skills back with him to the creative realm.
Yeah, that's what I keep telling myself. So, Jim, let's take it from the top here. What's the deal with Garth Marenghi? Well, it's an 80s low-budget Monster of the Week horror show created by and starring author, dreamweaver, and visionary Garth Marenghi. Or is it? Yeah, so to go into more detail, it takes place at the Darkplace Hospital, built atop the very gates of hell, and it follows the adventures of Dr. Rick Douglas, medical doctor, Vietnam and Falklands War veteran, and former warlock. Or does it, Jim? Or does it? So the answer to that question is yes, it does actually take place at Darkplace Hospital, built atop the very gates of hell. But technically, it's not an 80s low-budget Monster of the Week horror show. What it actually is a parody of cheesy 80s horror and action shows.
Which I love. I love with my whole heart.
Great. The parody or the 80s horror and action shows?
Both.
Good.
I love cheesy 80s horror. I love 80s action. And I'm a parody connoisseur, if you will.
Well, Jim, this might be a show for you. So it was created by Richard Ayoade and Matthew Holness, released in 2004. It's basically, we were talking about this earlier, right? The mockumentary trend. I guess I'd been thinking about it because I was throwing this together in a fucking blind panic the 30 minutes before we started recording. It's kind of a different take on the mockumentary format that was brought to prominence by The Office. The format of this is that that Garth Marenghi, he's a horror author, right? And he is basically kind of a Stephen King parody. He has made a lot of terrible books, and he made a terrible TV show in the 80s that nobody aired. And then in 2004, which is the year that this show was released, they finally put it on TV, but it has kind of clips from the cast, present day interviews with the cast later on. So they're kind of talking about the show they made back in the 80s and why they were such visionaries and why the man kind of stopped this from reaching the audience that it deserved. So it definitely is, given that this came out 2004, I'd say it's kind of part of the sort of development of mockumentaries in comedy. It's kind of a different take on it, as I said, rather than just kind of filming it like in The Office or What We Do in the Shadows. It's like using the talking heads of present day to comment on footage that's supposed to be shot 20 years earlier. And by the way, as you might note, it's now the 20th anniversary in 2024. What a perfect time to pick up this show.
Now,
So
I was going to say, is this a show where they're in the midst of doing a reboot, revival, legacy sequel? Because I feel like I heard of it recently, but again, maybe it was just you recommending it.
Possibly. Well, maybe you heard about it because of the whole anniversary thing. Like literally, what happened to me was I got a clip on TikTok on my For You feed from Garth Marenghi, and that made me go and rewatch it because there are only 6 episodes, so it's a very quick rewatch. They didn't do season after season, and in fact, it wasn't that successful as far as ratings when it was released. They aired it in the middle of the night like you would one of these fucking shows, and you know, it's a very high concept, right? Like you really have to kind of grasp what's going on. So unsurprisingly, it's gotten a cult following over the years, which makes so much sense for this show, right? Like, it's a show that's supposed to be almost one that has a cult following, and it accidentally developed that. But I would say it's part of the sort of canon of 2000s UK comedies. So, of course, you love Spaced. As this came out a few years after Spaced, a few years before The IT Crowd, which, of course, Richard Ayoade is one of the main characters in The IT Crowd as well, which is not really a show that I am crazy about, to be honest, or have watched that much of, but it's a very popular show with similar people involved.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've had people tell me that I should watch it, and I don't know. I wasn't maliciously not watching it. I just have never seen it.
Yeah, I kind of gave it a shot, but it wasn't necessary. It wasn't as much for me as this show is anyway. Because what really makes this show shine is the attention to detail, Jim. Basically every aspect of how it's put together, it lives and breathes. This was shot in somebody's garage. Like when they're driving a car, you can kind of see the walls behind, and they're like moving lights in front of them to make it seem like they're driving, which would be funny in itself, but invariably those scenes are Garth Marenghi, this fucking cool ass doctor, this character that, Rick Douglas Dag is the name of the main character, Rick Douglas MD. He is he's basically such a cool dude. Garth Marenghi has written himself into the coolest dude ever. Like when he's driving along and there's a bit of mist, he's always got some inner monologue going on about like how he's basically brooding and dark and cool, and he's always got a gun. It takes place at a hospital. For some reason, this hospital has like a bar in it. His boss in the hospital is complete. It's Richard Ayoade plays him, and he is fully like the sergeant in a buddy cop like show. He's like, damn it, I'll see you in my office. Like that is his boss at the hospital for some reason, where they fight demons and occult things.
I mean, everything you're saying, I'm loving. You're selling me big time, and it's working.
Good. So, you'll appreciate this as well, someone who makes things creatively, because the attention to detail in things like the bad continuity, they have like intentionally bad continuity. The editing is very funny in itself. They have very cheap special effects, very strange ways of shooting stuff. They have very dramatic ways of framing the shots. But it's basically from the very first second, you have a retro intro. So the Channel 4 in the UK is the sort of people who broadcast this actual show, and they use like their 80s version of their logo at the start to kind of bring you into that world of this being an older show. The credits even at the start will say like music composed by Stig Bosvik, who is some made up person, and then it says like based on melodies whistled by Garth Marenghi. And then there's all the in-character interviews and sort of content. So there's obviously the in-character interviews within the show, but even when they were releasing the show, they kind of refused to break character in any interviews, any promotional materials. They were fully like acting as it. Garth was Garth. There was no Matthew Holness behind the screen, the scene. So yeah. That's kind of the gist of it. And all of what I've just said is why it's a good show. Now, here's why I think it actually works. Because all of this is like, that's funny, and I would watch a sketch of it. But the reason that you actually keep watching is basically that in the same way that Buffy heightens the real world teen situations into something supernatural, every episode of Garth Marenghi offers a new insight into how fucked up this author Garth is. It explores some new horrible aspect of Garth's personality. And that's what makes it funny, because we're watching this show that he's created, he's written, so we know it's kind of an insight into how he thinks about the world, and it's so dumb. He's such a megalomaniac and a bad writer who thinks he's the best writer. So whether it's racism against Scottish people, where randomly he one episode is like the Scottish mist that's coming down from up north, and he's like jaded from having seen the disgusting Scottish people like in some war or whatever. It is supernatural times. There's extreme sexism where I think one of the characters is just on her period, and that kind of turns her into like a psychotic, like make your head explode with a scream type woman. And of course, in every single episode, he needs to be the coolest dude ever. He's just badass, has a leather jacket, but looks like an actual dweeb. Like, it's just such a perfect mix of them. So it's basically a character study of a delusional egomaniac packaged as a parody.
I mean, again, everything you're saying, I'm not sure. I guess your request fell on deaf ears when you tried to tell me to watch this in the past, because I'm not sure why I haven't already seen this.
Yeah, well, all we have left now on this presentation is the Q&A section. Oh, whoops. The Q&A section. So, for example, question, are you going to watch it? Yes, Jacob, you put in a lot of effort. I put that up on the slide there. And of course, I also grabbed the intro, which we've compiled so that maybe we can play that to give you a concrete idea of what I'm talking about here. But any questions first, Jim?
Okay. Now, when did you first watch this? Like, has it aired shortly after it aired? Was it more recent?
No, I think I stumbled upon some sort of clip of it maybe 5 years ago or something like that, and I watched it the whole way through, and then I did kind of forget it existed, and then just saw a clip and was like, oh my god, yes, this show is amazing, I need to rewatch this, which I did, kind of accidentally in celebration of its 20th anniversary.
So, well, being what it is, I guess I kind of maybe already know the answer to this, but Do you think that it's from a more of a time and place that's gone, where where this doesn't work as well because I guess it's not quite a mockumentary, but mockumentaries, as we mentioned, have been done to death so much. Is there any nostalgia here? I guess it shouldn't be too much nostalgia because you haven't watched it that long ago.
No, I think so. The mockumentary part is kind of small, right? Because we have these talking heads, but unlike say Modern Family, where it'll cut to someone talking and then show the video footage of them doing the opposite thing, and that's kind of where the comedy comes from. You have these very different realities of the show within the show that you're watching. So that's like most of it, right? And you're seeing these scenarios play out, the editing, all of this stuff, and then you'll cut to the talking head interviews where they take it so extremely seriously and they think that like they're actual geniuses, but they'll be completely not self-aware, talking about when they made this, and I don't have any good examples on hand, but basically it's a different tension than what you usually see in mockumentaries, because most of it obviously isn't a mockumentary. It's kind of like a parody. It's like a fake show that they made to look like a show that was 20 years older than it actually was, and bad. So it's kind of like got those mockumentary qualities, but it's not central. It's not driving the whole story.
Okay. No, I think that about sums it up. Yes, Jacob, you put in a lot of effort.
Yes,
That was my
I
answer.
sure did. I sure did. Well, do you want to pull up the intro just to give an idea? And I think you'll get an idea, dear listener, even just from hearing the actual intro here.
Yeah, let me pull it up.
I'm Garth Marenghi, author, dreamweaver, visionary, plus actor. You are about to enter the world of my imagination. You are entering my dark place.
You know what? I think what I can also say, and this is like after hearing all of this, it'll be like a huge compliment, is because I know I've seen probably think pieces or articles referencing this on different movie or TV websites. And I think I always assumed it actually was just an old show that people were watching for the goof.
Yeah.
Which is fine. But I was just like, whatever, that's fine. People rediscovered this old thing. So, they really did nail that, because it does just look like some old thing. But the fact that there's more to it, that does make it more intriguing to me.
Yeah, because like one of my thoughts was like, why would you watch this instead of just going and watching a really cheesy, bad TV show from that time, right? But I think it is very funny. And like, there's a clip there in the intro of Garth running towards the camera in slow motion, and it just made me remember in that episode, like one of the talking heads, they're like, yeah, so we were often very, very under time. Some of the episodes were 10, 15 minutes, and we made up for it with slow motion. Honestly, anything that could be turned into slow motion, anything without dialogue, was fair game to be slow motion. And then that episode just has shitloads of slow motion for no reason. Yeah.
No,
so
I
that's
like
it.
it. I think
I've sold
that's
you.
a great success. I mean, the show does, well, I guess it doesn't speak for itself, because again, I think I've seen pictures and clips, and I just assumed it was an old show that people were just goofing on for being bad. But you filled in the blanks, and I do want to watch it.
Great. Well, the real measure of success will be next episode to hear if you've actually checked out the first episode. So I look forward to that, Jim.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess look at that. An hour flies when you're having a blast talking TV with your buds. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. And if you want to check out Garth Marenghi after this, why don't you let us know that your interest has been piqued? Leave us a comment at youtube.com/showswhatyouknow. Subscribe, of course. Share the video. Tell a friend. And leave a review on our Apple Podcasts feed as well. Shows What You Know on your podcatcher of choice.
Absolutely. And I guess when we have a TikTok now.
Oh, that's
we're
new.
Official. We're TikTok official.
It's at Shows What You Know. No fucking letter U bullshit. Fuck Twitter. Fuck X. It's on TikTok. It's at Shows What You Know, like you would spell it. So you'll be able to find it, no problem. Give us a follow there. Repost our shit.
Yeah. Well, we're back, baby. Thanks for joining us on this journey. I guess that's that.
That's that. See you next time, everyone.
See you later.
We our Shows What You Know. We'll always watch TV, and if you think we can't, we'll watch more and you'll see. That's why the people of the web believe in Jim from Las Vegas and Jakob from Sweden.